And a 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room, and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind, and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9, animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. And at 8, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason, they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like, NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me. And at 6, spring locked. In FNAF 3, we watch as William Afton tries to save his own skin. He knows the animatronics are alive and tries to save himself by dismantling them in an effort to make sure they won't be able to, you know, stuff him into a furry suit. But in this action, as we see in the 8-bit minigames, he ends up releasing the souls of the characters. Well, I guess technically they aren't released, they just appear in an astral form or something, since they'd still be possessing the suits because he needs to melt them down, but yeah. This scares William because, you know, 5 of his murder victims are staring him down like Chica in a hot slice of pizza, so he does the one thing that he could think of, try and scare them back, by getting into the spring Bonnie suit he used to lure them away in the first place. This suit makes him feel powerful, it's a confidence booster, it makes him feel like he's in control. A weird way to express a dom kink, but okay, I'm not judging. However, he does this so fast and the room was so moist and wet that instead of scaring them, he gets himself snapped. The spring locks fail and the suit shoots plenty of tiny and large bits of endoskeleton metal into his body, causing him to collapse and convulse, oozing blood like the kids in their suits. But this causes so much hassle because now, 30 years later, when he is set free, he can still kill. He isn't the frail old man that he should be. He has the strength of the animatronic behind him, and he's gonna use it. Halfway through number 5, Bite of 83. The Bite of 83, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, is one of the most confusing moments in a timeline sense. Like, we know it happened in 1983, but what happened to the crying child after? Does William indeed put him back together? Does he possess something? What happened to crying child? But this is an important moment too, because despite the confusion between 1987 and 1983, this would only drive William deeper into his madness, causing him to do unspeakable and unexpected things, like turn his son into a robot and give him false memories of killing his younger sibling so he wouldn't go back to a Freddy's location, naming the new robot version Michael, for instance. Or by just going on even more of a killing spree, not caring about the consequences of his actions because what else does he have to lose? And if crying child does end up possessing the security logbook or even Golden Freddy, then that only goes to serve this point too. The Bite of 83 is a horrific but important moment. And for Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame from FNAF 3 was planned to be the end of the series. Scott said that the game was meant to be the last, but people were disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, so he made FNAF 4, which makes sense now since it's pretty much an overcorrection. That's why those animatronics are so damn terrifying and horrific, and why FNAF 4 is listed as the end of the original FNAF story. The souls at the time of FNAF 3's release are in fact set free, hence the good and bad endings, but come FNAF 4 and more so sister location, we learn that this isn't the case, since the remnant metal used to make the fun times is actually made of the remnant from the original 5 kids, which causes some interesting plot holes but could help explain a lot. Like, the children's spirits could have been released, but the metal was still infused with their agony perhaps, allowing it to be more conductive for spirits, hence why Elizabeth possesses babies so quickly, or something along those lines maybe, I don't know. The horrific implications of the original ending to the series make this one of the most important FNAF lore moments, especially if it had ended there. Imagine if it had. Imagine how simple the games would have been if it just ended in FNAF 3. And that was the ending. We set the spirits free and that was it. We were good. Didn't work. In a 3, business expansion. When a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like, if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. How the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game to opening an entire mall-sized pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in. What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened and to see if their pizza is recycled. Penultimately, in a number 2, investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood, so much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me, and honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Guess they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was coal. Finally, in at number 1, doors! You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud. Yes.
Number 9. Purple Guy. So one of the unexplained parts of FNAF is something that I feel like we have been trying to justify for years, but that also might just be as simple as a game design explanation. This one, I guess, is sort of explained, but it's never been explicitly confirmed by Scott Cawthon, I don't believe. So because I feel like it's interesting and we don't know for sure, I figured I'd include it here. In the mini games, William Afton appears as a purple guy. This became so synonymous with the character that one of his aliases even became Purple Guy. But why does he appear to be purple? Some claim this is because William Afton is an undead figure. He died, he rotted, turning purple, much like Michael did in Sister Location. He also looks purple in that game as well, in the mini games. If we even want to call those mini games, I don't know, the mini walking about. And so, because William Afton's corpse is all decomposed, that's how he appears. But what about in FNAF 3? We also see a mini game where he seems to be alive as we watch as he gets into the Springtrap suit, running from what we assume are the ghosts of his victims. Once in the suit, it's evident that the spring locks have malfunctioned, puncturing his body and killing him. So if he doesn't die till after, how could he be purple before? Why would he appear purple before his death in these games? Well, some have theorized it's to make the character stand out. A Redditor by the username of Stray Dogs actually suggested that it is actually because of the style of old Atari 2600 games. William Afton is actually a shadowy figure. Those old games usually only had a black backdrop. So for anything that was supposed to be shadowy, you would use purple or something to avoid it blending into the background. I think that's actually a pretty good explanation. So I know I said unexplained, but that one might be explained because I just think it makes sense. But let me know what you think. Is it rotting, or is it old game styles, or do you still feel like we don't have an answer for it yet? And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up. If you love FNAF videos, make sure you show us you love them so we can make more content for you. Number 8, Ballora's Song. Something that continues to haunt me is Ballora's Song. Many fans believe that Ballora is a stand-in for William Afton's deceased or simply ex-wife who left him in some kind of permanent capacity, whether through death or just by choice. Ballora's song that she sings seems to play into this theory very well. Ballora sings about wanting someone to come join her, someone who is secluded, seemingly in mourning, and who has no joy left in their life. The idea here is that Ballora is echoing the feelings of Afton's wife, who felt that William was lost to her because of his work, and possibly because of an accident that caused them to lose a child, also adding distance between them. Ballora sings, "All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away." If Ballora was built to represent William's wife, who left him after the loss of a child, then these lyrics seem to make a lot of sense. However, we still have no real idea if Ballora is meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or if William was ever married at all. I'm still contemplating whether or not his children really are his biological children and not kids that he adopted, created, or potentially kidnapped. What do you think? Is Ballora meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or is she just another of William's twisted creations, meant to just creep us out?
And it's 7 wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, what? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing, because like, WTF. And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time, and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place. Halfway through into number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus. And for business deals, the people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2.
Number 3, Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy. Why do Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy crash your game? This is a mystery that still seems unexplained. I guess we could just easily explain it away with the fact that antagonists in the game each simply have their own thing that they do, their own way of punishing you, and this is Shadow Bonnie's and Golden Freddy's way of doing so. If you are not proactive enough, that is. Still, it seems very meta in comparison to some of the other punishments, as this punishment isn't something that happens to the character you're playing as in-game, like losing power, being unable to access your screens, doors getting stuck open or closed and things like that. But instead, it's something that happens outside of the in-game environment, affecting you as a player, not you as a character in-game. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean anything? Number 2, getting scooped. A strange moment in terms of what we see happen in-game versus what would really happen in real life can be experienced in Sister Location. In this game, at the end of your true story, your character, Eggs Benedict, who we believe to be Michael Afton, gets scooped. Ennard then wears your skin as a human disguise, allowing them to leave the Circus Baby and Entertainment rental facility. Afterwards, the protagonist rejects the insides of Ennard after outwardly rotting. Being that they have no guts and should be dead, this would, in theory, be the end of their story, because now they literally have nothing inside them. They just upchucked it. They would crumble to the ground and finally be 100% dead. I mean, technically getting scooped should also make you 100% dead, but in either case, that's not what happens. Instead, you hear Circus Baby's voice reassuring you that you won't die, and we see good ol' Eggs Benny come back to life. How is this possible? We still have no idea. Though I would, once again, like to use this opportunity to assert my Afton's children are lifelike humanoid animatronics theory. Anyone? Anyone taking that theory? I think it's a pretty good theory. Number 1, the murders. One of the greatest mysteries is also one of the most important ones, especially when it comes to understanding the most prominent character in the franchise, William Afton. The murders that he committed still baffle players. We also don't even really know if he committed all of the murders. Recently, there has been some doubt based on evidence found in the Fazbear Frights books as to whether or not he could actually have maybe an accomplice, possibly Vanny, and even more ridiculously, I don't know, possibly a time-traveling Vanny? I don't know. Why William Afton seeks to kill is still a huge unexplained question in the game, and one that is crazy important, because it would also help to explain ideally so many other things that William has done. The murderous events that have been referred to in the lore, and the why behind them remains one of the most puzzling and most important mysteries that FNAF has given us. Number 10, Death by Gumdrop. I have always found the story from Fazbear Frights, known as Gumdrop Angel, deeply disturbing. This one comes from the book of the same name and features a story where spoiled children consume candy before turning into it themselves. They then generally make their way back to the restaurant where they themselves are boxed up and served to other children for their birthday as a birthday treat. It's pretty scary stuff. Never mind getting jump scared, I want to see this option for our deaths pop up in the video game world of FNAF. Much more frightening, I think, to slowly become a paralyzed but sentient human-shaped gumdrop that is then torn to pieces and consumed by others as they smile, laugh, and rejoice at your unknowing demise. Like, wow, that's really dark. Where's that in the games? Number 9, Fan of the Fan. The fan has been a key prop in the FNAF series. A trusty fan usually exists in most of the offices that we've attempted to survive in throughout these games. But what if even the fan was horrifying? That's right, I want to see even our trusty fan become something that can jump scare us to death. I want to see the fan transformed into an animatronic. I know it sounds weird, but what if there was an animatronic always in the office with you that you also had to monitor, lest it would sneak up on you and spook you? I think it could be really wonderfully weird and delightfully upsetting in the best of ways. After all, if we all got an allusion to the Scott Cawthon created sentient coffee pot, and there can be a whole game about a little candle, what's to stop us from making the fan a character in the FNAF franchise? I'm just saying. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about some of our favorite things that haven't come up yet in the games, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Bunny Call. Bunny Call is the name of a Fazbear Frights story and book. It is the 5th book in the Fazbear Frights series and also features the story that I want to talk about, the titled story there, Bunny Call. In this story, we join our protagonist, Bob, who is headed to Camp Atenia with his family. However, he didn't want to go, and because of that signs them up as payback for an early morning wake-up call from Ralpho the Bunny, the camp's mascot. Later, Bob regrets his decision and attempts to prevent Ralpho from entering the cabin the morning of the call. He succeeds, despite the fact that the bunny mascot is super persistent and tries to get into the cabin pretty much every which way. Bob later learns that this person was not actually Ralpho, as the staff member who does the morning bunny calls never came around and overslept. I've always wanted a Fazbear summer camp experience, and it would be really cool to have something like the bunny call happen in said potential future game. Who else is down for the Freddy Fazbear's Family Fun summer camp experience? Anyone? Anyone? Just me? Number 6, the end of Sister Location. One of the endings for Sister Location, not the true ending, but still, shows us that despite us managing to survive the night and escape Ennard, if that's the ending you get, avoiding getting scooped, even when we make it safely home to watch our soaps, we're not truly safe. Instead, we are pursued by Ennard, who somehow manages to escape the facility without us, even though that was the whole point of needing to scoop us in the first place, was to be able to escape. And also, miraculously, either finds a way to follow us home or find out somehow where we live. I guess they could have our address on file at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but still, how did they get out? What? Number 5, It's Me. It's me is a phrase that pops up all over the place in FNAF 1 and is classified as being a hallucination. But what does it mean and where does it come from? There are a wide variety of theories on this subject, but many of them differ. One thing that many have in common is they believe the words "it's me" are coming from the animatronics, but whether the phrase is intended to be malicious, reassuring, or simply is some kind of plea for help from the spirits that haunt those animatronics remains to be decided on. What's more, these are just theories theories about the phrase. We still don't really have any definitive proof that tells us exactly what "it's me" is meant to refer to and why it shows up all over the place in FNAF 1, from Foxy's sign here and there to background posters to simply appearing on your screen in accompaniment with either Freddy or Bonnie. That is, of course, if you get that glitch. Because it doesn't always show up, but it can. Number 3, Lucky Boy's influence. Another story that has haunted me ever since I first came upon the Fazbear Frights books is Sergio's Lucky Day from the 8th book in the series, Gumdrop Angel. Truly, Gumdrop Angel still has some of the most horrifying stories ever thus far when it comes to these books. And Sergio's Lucky Day is definitely one of them. In this story, Sergio finds Lucky Boy, who is very similar in appearance to Balloon Boy, but if you combine it with something like the toy known as a Magic 8-Ball. Anyone else remember Magic 8-Balls? Are those still a thing? I think those are still a thing. You used to shake them, and then you would ask them a question and they would tell you the answer to it. They would tell you what you should be doing. Lucky Boy helps guide Sergio, making his wishes and his dreams come true, seemingly, and bringing him luck, but eventually also twisting his sense of free will and ultimately leaving Sergio in a worse condition by the end of the story, even influencing Sergio into disfiguring himself in an attempt to impress and get a date with his old high school crush as he attends his high school reunion. I really hope we get to experience the influence of Lucky Boy in Security Breach, or possibly a future FNAF game. We've already met Balloon Boy and the female version of that character, JJ, but it would be really cool if there was a whole series of just different types of creepy statues or toys like this, Balloon Boy, Lucky Boy, Good Boy, Laughing Boy. I like the idea of something that sounds really nice but is actually terrible. All of them could be cursed in their own way. Number 2, Stitch Wraith. The Stitch Wraith is a character I think we've all been hoping comes to the FNAF games continuity. A fan favorite from the books, the Stitch Wraith is a character that appears in each epilogue of each Fazbear Frights book, and the mystery of which has been unraveled throughout the series of these books. It would be cool to see them adapted to the games and see what side that they would be on, the side of good or the side of evil. I imagine the Stitch Wraith as a creepy ally who freaks you out, but also aids you in your fight to stop William Afton. Maybe as long as you stay out of their way. The Stitch Wraith is a character I'd love to be jump scared by, but I would also love to see take on Afton themselves. Number 1, Master Plan Reveal. Something I have been waiting a long time for, it feels like. I think something we've all been waiting for, really, is the great reveal of exactly why William Afton did all this. Was it all orchestrated? Why does he kill? Was it all a mad science experiment? Are these acts committed in fits of passion? Is it a compulsive urge to kill that drives him? We still don't know any of this. Something I would love to see in Security Breach, or at least at some point in the near-ish future, is a grand speech delivered by William that explains pretty much everything. His motivation, why he did what he did, even what inspired him to get into the world of family restaurants, pizza, arcades, and animatronics. Perhaps we could get a whole game that reveals some more of his backstory and motivation besides, but I'd honestly just be content at this point with some evil monologue explaining his master plan. Just please, help us understand. Give us some kind of explanation. Number 7, Time Traveling Spring Bonnie. In Into the Pit from the first Fazbear Frights book of the same name, we learn of a time-traveling ball pit that protagonist Oswald disappears through, taking him back to what appears to be an old Freddy's of the past. At one point, he seems to experience what it was like when those murders happened, the chaos surrounding them that day when all those young ones went missing. He even runs into the person responsible, who we assume to be William Afton in a Spring Bonnie suit. Spring Bonnie also attempts to follow Oswald back to his present day and seemingly succeeds, kind of taking the place of his father. I think it would be horrifying to incorporate some of these elements into the villain themselves and the games. I mean, what's scarier than William Afton that doesn't die? How about immortal William Afton who can also time travel? I swear, if that ball pit in Security Breach does not allow us to time travel, I'm gonna be so disappointed. I'm gonna be elated on one hand because I'm gonna be yay, time travel could complicate things. I'm also gonna be so sad because I'm expecting the time travel now. Number 6, Andrew fights back. While William Afton has been a major character the whole way through when it comes to the FNAF game franchise, we still have yet to meet another seemingly important character from the books. A character we believe is named Andrew. Andrew is believed to be the vengeful, childlike spirit that haunts William's severely burnt self in the Fazbear Fright story The Man in Room 1280, which comes from the book Bunny Call, the 5th in the series. Here we learn that the spirit is the one keeping William alive despite being so badly injured. The spirit refuses to let William die because he wants William to suffer as he has suffered. It is believed that this child, Andrew, was an early victim of Afton's. He also is affiliated with an alligator mask that could be a symbol of Montgomery Gator. Andrew goes on to become one of the spirits that possesses the Stitch Wraith and often is angry and vengeful. Considering Montgomery Gator is in Security Breach and maybe who this mask refers to, it's hopeful that we could see someone like Andrew show up in the games at some point, helping to also prevent William from resurrecting back into the physical world. Which would be a really cool team up, I'm not gonna lie. Number 5, Cooked Alive. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but here we are. One of the scariest moments for me from the Fazbear Frights books is from the story What We Found. In this story from the 8th Fazbear Frights book, Gumdrop Angel, we learn the story of a man named Hudson, who becomes a security guard at the Fazbear Frights location. He ends up tormented by the ghosts and Springtrap, all while seemingly hallucinating from the bad ventilation in this place. In the end, he gets cooked alive in one of the ovens in the kitchen, trapped there with it somehow being turned on. While many of the FNAF games take place in restaurants or involve them in some way, we've never seen or experienced anything quite as gruesome as this in the games. We've seen animatronics being burned alive, but never people, and I think this is a deeply disturbing level of horror that the games could use. I mean, kitchens are scary after all. They have all kinds of things that could hurt you, so it's weird that we've never really explored them more in this world, especially as a lot of the places, we've been in have had kitchens. It looks like we'll be spending at least some time in the kitchen in Security Breach, so I guess we'll have to see if such gruesome fates await us or our enemies there. Number 4, Charlie's robotic origins. A cool thing for us to learn in the games that originally comes from the books. In the Silver Eyes trilogy, we learned that Charlie, or Charlotte, Henry's daughter, was never really human. Well, she was originally human, I guess, but it was a really long time ago. She was kidnapped and killed by William Afton when she was very young, believing for years that it was actually her twin brother, Sammy, who had died. In reality, it was not her twin brother, but herself. Filled with grief, her father, Henry, lost his mind as he made 4 humanoid yet robotic versions of Charlie to represent the different stages of her life. Eventually, one of these robots dies, and we learn the truth about Charlie's origins in that final book, The Fourth Closet. It would be cool to see a robotic version of Charlie resurface in the games, and learn that she had lived on in some way after her death as a robot that Henry had made.
Getting close to the end of number 3, FNAF 6. FNAF 6 is another one of those ending sequences, where the series looks like it could have ended, and while slightly more convoluted, it would have been okay. We would have hammered out the rest eventually. The FNAF 6 ending, though, was indeed the end of multiple animatronics. Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Ennard were all released in the FNAF fire, as well as Michael, who stays to burn, and Henry, who stayed so nobody would remember this place or this story. However, we know one escaped. Springtrap, or Scraptrap, William Afton himself, managing to evade death once again, and it wouldn't be until later where we found out and understood how, and yet we figured he would be back. He always comes back, and now, with nobody to stand against him, he's free to do whatever he wants. Henry isn't fighting him, Michael isn't fighting him, they both thought he would burn, but he's free, as free as he can be while being stuck inside a video game world. For now. And ultimately in number 2, The Man in Room 1280. While plenty of people brush these books off as just books, the story of The Man in Room 1280 is one of the most important pieces of lore we have gotten from this series. It answers a question that we've all had since FNAF 3. How does William keep surviving? How does he always come back? And while it may seem minuscule, this is the biggest hint that we've gotten in ages. Learning that William was possessed by the spirit of one of his victims explains more in the series than any Easter egg Scott had left us. I don't care that Fun time Foxy can mimic voices, or how the Scooper can inject a remnant. It mattered how William's signature line of "I always come back" is true, and this book delivered. It also explains how he came to possess a hard drive that got scanned into Help Wanted. It explains that since he was possessed, he was alive in FNAF 3, and that explains how he survived the fire in both FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. It showed us that everyone knows what he did despite not being convicted. It provided so much for us, and that makes it the most important piece of confirmed lore that we have. There is one moment that is more important, but we have nothing on it at the time of this recording. And that point is, finally, in at number 1, the breaking point. The breaking point in this scenario is referring to the moment William started killing. We don't know when it was, we don't know why it was. To us, it's just always been a thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was an incident before that of the missing children's from the first game that was just his first kill. We don't know what drove him into killing, and there's no way that would have been the first, right? Nothing has been confirmed or even presented in the games. There are hypotheses that it was due to his wife or lover dying, perhaps due to childbirth, or that it was because one of his children died, but we know that can't be true unless he had another kid that we haven't seen, because he had designed animatronics to kill before his children died. There were really no indicators as to why he started on his mass killing spree. It could just be that he's insane and wanted to do it, or maybe he wanted to unlock the mysteries of life, or maybe it was just an accident the first time but then he got a taste for it. We don't know, and we don't even have any evidence to go off, so all of this is just hypothesis and guesswork. It can't even really be educated guesswork, because we don't know enough about Afton himself to make a real connection. Like, we don't understand him as a person, if you kind of get what I'm saying. We know parts of his story, but we don't know what's in his brain, and that's what we would need to make an educated guess, at least from the crime shows I've watched.